And this past week, I sat down with the city's police chief, Levi Ritter, and asked him about joining in the march and the changes now rapidly coming. You joined in the Black Lives Matter protest and march here in Plattsburgh a couple of weeks ago. Why did you decide to participate?
It wasn't totally my decision. I wanted to be respectful of the protesters, of what they intended to do, that we were going to support them, we were going to try and provide as much safety as we could, and facilitate a peaceful protest. So during that dialogue, the question was asked, would you want to march with us? And I said, if it's a consensus amongst the planning group, I'd gladly march with you.
And then at the police station, you, after kneeling for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, you took questions from community members. What kind of questions did you get? What were you hearing from the community?
They didn't all focus on Black Lives Matter related questions. They did focus on the role of the police. And that seems to be a very central question that people are asking in the nation today is, what should the role of the police be?
What should the role of the police be? How should it change?
That is a question that in this state the governor is going to pose to the local municipalities to answer. That's what we've been charged with, is here are the topics that need to be addressed, and communicate with the stakeholders in the community and a lot of other people. And that's going to be one of the questions, is ultimately, how does the community, how does policing get tailored for a specific community? Because the city of Plattsburgh is very different from the city of Buffalo, the city of New York, or the village of Lake Placid. It's not a one-size-fits-all adoption. So that's why the community needs to be inputted into that conversation.
And that's what's going to happen over the next year?
That is what's going to happen.
Did you have a good exchange with the organizers?
It was very positive. Our primary concern was the safety of the protesters. Towards the end of the week, we started receiving reports from them and intaking that they were being threatened. And it goes to the central reason of why they're protesting, is that, they get to express their opinion in a peaceful way. That's what they wanted. That's what the community wanted, was a peaceful protest, because contrasting with what had been seen on the news across the country and even across our own state were violent protests and riots. And that was one of the concerns, was what's going to happen here in the city of Plattsburgh. And they expressed from the very start that they wanted it to be a peaceful protest.
They were threatened over social media?
They did receive some threats in person. They had protested. They had a protest in the evening in Trinity Park during the week, and there'd be people driving by and saying things and squealing their tires and trying to intimidate them. And there's no place for that.
Was that troubling to you? Disappointing?
It's very disappointing for what Plattsburgh is. Even going back to the early 2000s when the Westboro Baptist Church came and protested. And I remember that as a rallying moment for the city of Plattsburgh with the No Hate movement. It took something like that really galvanized this community. And I think what we saw during the protests last week was some of that, the community rallying together for a common cause.
The mayor said on the day of the protest that the city would review its police policies, and that has happened. The mayor says there's been a complete revision of policing policies in the city. Several have been reviewed and changed, including the use of force?
Correct.
What changes have happened or are happening when it comes to the use of force?
It looks at what the best practices are. Ultimately, what I chose to use was something very robust that would address very specific things and a lot of different things.
Will it ban chokeholds?
It does. It prohibits it.
And stress de-escalation training?
So de-escalation is part of the new policy that it wasn't previously. One of the things that is going to be part of the comprehensive review this year is how to implement de-escalation training.
What else? What other changes?
I actually researched the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force policy. And given the incident that occurred there, they have a duty to intervene clause in their use of force policy. And even in a case where it's actually spelled out, it still wasn't followed. But it's the accountability of having it in the policy. That's why I felt it needed to be in there.
We're hearing in other cities for calls to defund police and move some of that money to social services. Is that being looked at here? Should that be looked at here?
I've seen in Vermont and in other areas, but I got to listen to the chief in Vermont years ago talk about how they implemented a crisis worker with the police department in response to people that are mentally ill or in crisis. And I've got to tell you, I think there's a lot of good data that supports that. It's just how do you implement it? So in terms of defunding, reallocating, I think that there should be a serious conversation about, at the very least, that the mental health component response not being solely police, or maybe not involving the police.
The mayor says he's putting together a citizens advisory committee that's going to help reinvent the city's policing, a board that will oversee policing in the city. Is that a good idea?
So this is what is going to help shape the new policy changes, how we are going to specifically tailor the police response, the police department in the city of Plattsburgh, specific to the needs of the city of Plattsburgh. So I think it's helpful to have a combination of voices that represent all areas of the city of Plattsburgh.
The mayor this week announced he's calling for an investigation into the circumstances following an arrest by city police back in 2017. Video of that's been posted this week to Facebook, and while it, by everyone's account, has been heavily edited, it still shows at one point 4 or 5 officers piling on top of a man inside a holding cell at the city police station. He was suicidal, and the officers believed he was going to harm himself with his shirt or the drawstring in his shorts. So they stripped him down. But looking at that video, did they go too far?
When you look just at that slice of the video, it's hard to not draw that conclusion. But there is much more to it that isn't seen on the video. And not that that makes it any more or less right or just, but there was more to it than just that.
When you see the video, though, you understand that one snippet, the outrage that we're hearing from the community this week.
100%.
Were you the sergeant in charge that night?
I was.
Okay. But you were out on patrol that night?
Yes.
So you weren't there, you didn't witness that?
No.
But after that happened, was there an internal investigation?
There was.
And what happened? What came of that investigation?
I notified my supervisor at the time, that was the patrol lieutenant, and ultimately that was, the chief was briefed, and that investigation was conducted by them.
And do we know if the officers were disciplined in any way?
That's what I'm trying to get to the details of. I mean, I have a general sense of it, but the specifics I don't know yet. I believe there was.
Looking at that video, are there things about that trouble you as far as the police policies that are being reviewed right now and changed?
Yes.
What in particular?
The things that are said.
Like guys with Afghanistan with cops.
There's no room for that. That's what I'll leave it at. There's no room for that.
Both the use of force and then the follow-up, was there not medical attention provided?
That's something that I still can't get a conclusive answer on. Was it not offered or was it refused? I can't find documentation of either.
The mayor says he is doing an independent investigation. Do you welcome that?
I do. I do.
Governor Cuomo last week signed into law a sweeping package of police reforms passed by the state legislature in response to the death of George Floyd and the nationwide outcry. The reforms include putting investigations of officer-involved deaths in the hands of the Attorney General, calling for state police to wear body cameras, and overturning a provision that has kept officers' disciplinary records secret. 50A has now been repealed. A number of other reforms also included. Do you support the reforms passed by the legislature?
I do. I think it is the sentiment of what the public is asking for.
We should investigate and try to understand what occurred.
The mayor said this past week there will be a thorough review and investigation of what happened in this video in the holding cell at the Plattsburgh police station in 2017.